Noah Sanders was a 48-year-old architect living in a quiet suburb outside Dallas, Texas. He'd built a solid life, successful career, a modest home, and evenings filled with a hum of jazz records spinning in the background while sipping dark roast coffee. Life was steady, uneventful, and for the most part lonely since his divorce 3 years ago. But Noah never considered himself unlucky. In fact, he'd made peace with solitude. That was until something changed. It started on a Thursday evening when he walked into a local art gallery for a charity exhibit. He wasn't the usual gallery goer, but his friend Jeremy, a fellow architect, had a few pieces on display. The gallery buzzed with people, young professionals, art enthusiasts, and wine-sipping couples admiring abstract sculptures and moody paintings. Noah stood near a black-and-white photo exhibit, trying to make sense of a particularly cryptic piece, when he noticed her. A woman, no older than 27, with chestnut hair pulled into a messy bun, glanced at the same photo. She wore a vintage denim jacket, black jeans, and red lipstick that gave her a striking presence. She turned toward Noah with a subtle smile. "Do you get it?" she asked, nodding toward the photo. He chuckled. "Not really. But I pretend to." That made her laugh. "Fame. I usually just make up meanings and sound poetic." She extended her hand. "I'm Ava." "Noah," he said, shaking her hand gently. There was nothing overt about her approach, no flashy gestures or flirtatious comments. But something about her energy was undeniable. Ava didn't come off as a girl looking for attention. She was calm, poised, and refreshingly confident. And more importantly, she wasn't just interested in the art. She was interested in him. Noah initially chalked it up to her being friendly, but their conversation lingered. She asked about his thoughts on architecture, his favorite books, even which coffee shops he liked downtown. She seemed genuinely fascinated by the little things he mentioned, like the way he noticed the framing of old doorways or how certain buildings made him feel grounded. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed again, sometimes at the same gallery, other times at the coffee shop where Ava claimed to coincidentally bump into him. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. Noah realized there were subtle cues he had been overlooking. Ava often maintained eye contact just a bit longer than necessary. Her compliments weren't obvious. She'd say things like, "You carry yourself like someone who's been through storms but still chooses peace." Those weren't just words. They were layered with admiration and careful thought. She wasn't just trying to flatter him. She was studying him. One evening, while walking her to her car after another gallery visit, she casually mentioned, "I find older men more grounded. You don't get lost in trying to impress. There's depth in your silence, Noah. It's comforting." He was taken aback. Most of his interactions with women his age were formal, polite, and rarely included such raw honesty. Still, he couldn't help but question her intentions. He brought it up once, gently. "You know I'm almost twice your age," he said, leaning back in his chair as they sat outside the cafe under the patio lights. Ava shrugged. "You say that like it's a disadvantage. I find it attractive." Noah wasn't used to this kind of directness. In his younger days, he was the one doing the pursuing. Now things were reversed. He found himself stumbling emotionally in places where Ava walked with ease. It wasn't about seduction. It was about how she made him feel seen. The way she listened when he spoke about his failed marriage, or the quiet empathy she radiated when he shared memories about his father's passing. These moments created a different kind of intimacy. Younger women like Ava, he realized, didn't need to be flashy to show interest. They used subtle strategies that older men often missed. They used conversation as a way to show appreciation. They leaned into emotional depth, made room for vulnerability, and let admiration speak through curiosity. Noah also noticed that Ava paid attention to how he moved. She'd mention how she liked the way he carefully chose his words, or how he held a door open without making it feel like a performance. To him, these were mundane habits. To her, they were signs of character. One day, they visited a farmer's market together. Ava lingered near a stand selling handmade leather notebooks. You strike me as someone who still writes with a pen, she said, handing him one. I do, he said, surprised. How did you know? You have the hands of someone who values permanence, she replied. Noah had never been complimented like that. It wasn't about looks or charm. It was about understanding. First, he felt hesitant. Society often whispered that relationships with large age gaps were suspect, built on shallowness or fleeting attraction. But what he had with Ava felt different. It was real. It was respectful. And it was mutual. He began noticing how often younger women made the first move in subtle ways. Through intellectual engagement, emotional vulnerability, or simply creating space for deeper conversations. Ava had done all that. She never said, I like you, in those exact words, but her actions were unmistakable. One evening, while walking through a sculpture garden, she finally spoke what had been hovering between them. I didn't start this to play games, Noah. I see something in you that I don't see in guys my age. I don't want to waste time pretending otherwise. He stopped, watching the golden sunset bathe her in soft light. You really mean that? Yes, she said, stepping closer. I want something meaningful. And I think you do too. He nodded, heart racing in a way he hadn't felt in years. That night marked a turning point. Their connection deepened. It wasn't just about age or experience anymore. It was about shared values, mutual respect, and emotional chemistry. Their relationship was not perfect. There were moments of doubt, social whispers, even his own internalized worries. But Ava never flinched. She stayed consistent, patient, and real. She didn't try to impress with grand gestures. Instead, she focused on understanding, listening, and showing up. Noah began sharing their story with close friends, many of whom were skeptical at first. But when they saw how grounded and genuine Ava was, their perspective shifted. Some even joked, maybe I need to start visiting art galleries too. As time passed, Noah saw what so many men failed to recognize, that younger women like Ava often initiate connections with older men using a language most men overlook. It isn't flirtation in the traditional sense. It's about emotional intelligence, meaningful engagement, and subtle invitations to be known on a deeper level. He realized he had nearly missed it. One evening, a year into their relationship, Noah and Ava sat on the back porch of his house, sipping coffee while the cicadas sang in the distance. He turned to her and said, I used to think I'd never find someone who actually saw me for who I am. She leaned her head on his shoulder and replied, You just needed someone who looked a little closer. Noah smiled, understanding at last that real connection isn't bound by age, but by how deeply two souls choose to know one another. And in Ava's quiet attention, her thoughtful words and unwavering presence, he found something he thought was long gone, a future he didn't know he still deserved.